In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make this ocean water shader. I used a similar shader for this stream here, so you can use it for almost any body of water. The shader is based on the water from Super Mario Sunshine. Of course, my implementation is different, and I'm going to show you how to do that today in Godot. Okay, so I'm going to select my water mesh, come down to the material, and I'm going to create a new shader material so that we can start from scratch, create a new shader. I'm going to call this Ocean Shader for Tutorial. Cool. Open up that shader. And the shader basically consists of two textures scrolling over top of each other with a few more bits added on top. It's a bit more complicated, but you'll see. So we're going to start with our first image, texture 2D. And we're going to create a new noise texture. I made mine 256 by 128. And the reason for that is because waves are wide. That's basically it. So we want it to be wider. We're going to make it seamless. Set that to 1. Create new fast noise light. And the frequency will depend on how dense your UV map is. So my entire ocean plane, I've UV'd it so that it only covers one 128 by 128 texture. So that's quite small, which means that we need to have a very high frequency. So I'm going to set mine to 0.5. And we'll set the gain to 0. That just makes it look a bit smoother. You can't really tell when it's that small, but... So there we go, we've plugged it in there. And that's what it looks like to begin with. We need to create another texture. And we need to make this unique so that we don't change this one. They need to be separate. We need to make this unique as well, this fast noise light. And for this one, I made it even wider. If you'll have a look at my backup, you can see the waves are quite wide across, and that's because that second texture I've made it quite wide to represent the waves. So, but I also made it not as frequent. I reduced the frequency so that it's larger. And gain is 0 there too, that's fine. And now we multiply these together. And that's what we get. So you can see these black parts here, these darker parts. They are the waves that will be rolling in towards the shore. So now we need to make them move. And to do that, we get a UV panning node. We'll create 2 of these, 1 for each. And we need a time node. And we plug that into the offset. But it's really fast. That's going to give me a seizure. Holy crap. Yeah, let's just block that out for a second. So the reason it's really fast is because the scale here is 1. And it's just moving based on time, I guess seconds, milliseconds. I'm not sure, to be honest. But we're going to create a parameter to adjust this to taste. So this scale controls how fast it goes, and you'll notice there's 2 values, which means it's a vector 2. So it also controls the direction. So we're going to add a vector2 parameter. That's going to be, we're going to name this direction 1 and put that in here. And we can give it a default value. Let's go, I don't know, 0.01, because that was going really fast before. And we're going to create another one. Yep, direction 2. Put that into scale. And now we shouldn't have a seizure when we look at it. So currently they're scrolling the same direction at the same speed. So maybe we want to change that. So we need to click back onto our mesh, come down to the material, and then if you scroll past this shader down here to shader parameters, that's where our directions are. We can make this one negative 0.01. That's the opposite direction actually. So now I've set my directions, and you can see the darker patches would be the waves rolling in towards the shore, and the smaller ones will be the ripples on the surface of the water. But even though I made the frequency quite high, I think this is still too large. If we get in close, for one ripple, these spots are far too big. But we can fix that with a UV scaling node. So we're going to move these back. UV scaling. We're going to put another one up here too for the other texture. And that plugs into UV. And then we're going to create another float parameter. Even though this is a vector2, we can still just plug a float parameter and it'll just control both values rather than each value individually like we did with these ones. So we're going to plug that into scale, and we'll rename this to UV scale. Plug that into the scale up top as well. The default value here is 1. I'm going to set it to 4. I know that's what I have for my original scene. So now the scale looks a bit better. You might need to pick different values. But that's the texture side of things. So we've got our scrolling textures. And now we're going to actually change how the textures look. So we're going to move our output way over here, put some space in between. So the first thing that we want to do is cut out all the values that are too bright. Actually, first we want to put this into the alpha. So you can already see the waves coming in. Okay, so now we can see it without the caustics underneath because that's on a separate material. I'll show how to do that as well. So first we want to cut out all of the values that are too bright. And we do that with a compare node. And we want to do A is greater than or equal to B. Oh, excuse me, I'm doing the... Okay, we'll do the brights. We'll do the highlights first. So the first thing we want to do is cut out all the values that are too low. We're going to cut out all the values that are too high as well, but I've just got the order mixed up, but that's fine. So from this B here, we're going to drag that out and create a float parameter. And this is our highlight threshold. We're going to create a hint. So it's minimum 0, maximum 1. Default value, let's go 0.5, straight in the middle. And then we want to start here, get a multiply node. So we're multiplying our original textures with this comparison. And it doesn't seem to have done anything. What's going on? Oh, right. Okay, I haven't added it to the output yet. So we need to put an add vector 3. And we're going to put that into the output. So now you can see the effect of the highlights coming through. If we switch back, those are the highlights. You can see them coming in. And you can adjust the threshold here in your shader parameters. I had mine at 0.55, but you can set it however you want. And so now, for real this time, we're going to cut out all of the values that are too low. So we're going to go into another compare node, and this one is less than equal to. We want another float parameter. And I call this main threshold. And we set the default to this 0.3. All of these values, by the way, you can adjust them to taste. You don't have to follow exactly what values I've used. I'm sure Nintendo used different values. But get another multiply vector 3, plug that into B. We get the result from our textures, multiply that with our comparison, and then we add this together with our previous comparison. And this also needs to go into the albedo. That's why it doesn't look right. Still doesn't look right. What have I done wrong? Oh, I've picked the wrong comparison here. This is meant to be less than equal to. Much better. So you can kind of see, but it's quite dim. To fix that, you need to go to your material, come down here to modes, and select this, and I've set mine to add. And instantly that's looking like the water that I had before. In fact, I think that's it. That is it. I guess the only thing I haven't shown is how to make it fade into the distance. And the way I did that is with the vertex colors. So I get my input, select color, we go to multiply, vector 3 multiply. This is just going into the alpha, I believe. Oh, sorry, I don't want the entire colors. I just want the alpha. So I'll show you in Blender actually. But let's just check that has faded it out into the distance. Basically, I set up my vertex colors. I erased the alpha from the outside so that it fades into the distance. So that fades into the skybox. Here we are in Blender. And if I show you my vertex colors, so you can't see it when you're in vertex paint mode. But if we click onto the viewport, shading viewport, I've got mine set to diffuse color. And you can see that the vertices at the end are faded out. That's because I went to erase alpha in vertex paint mode and painted, erased the alpha from all the way around. And that's how you get that fade into the skybox. Yep, so that's how it fades into the skybox. Combine the alpha from the vertex colors with the alpha from our entire shader. Plug that into the alpha output. But you'll notice if I swap over to my original shader, I had these waves lapping up onto the shore. And the way I did that is, let me show you in Blender. We'll go to edit mode. I have this this circle of faces that go all the way around my island. And I used my second UV map. And if we go to UV editing, oops, put it on viewport shading. So I've got all of these faces around the outside, and I have just put them all so that they fit into one texture. So this side of my UVs would be up against the shore. And that's on my second UV map. My first UV map is the entire thing. So that's where we put the ocean shader. So now with these second UVs, we can add in a new texture. And I'm going to show you how I made that texture because you can't make it in Godot. So if we go to Krita, let's create a new 64 by 64. We make it black, go white, get our gradient. I've set my, yeah, that's gradient, yep. I've set the tool options, I've set it to bilinear so that it makes a gradient on either side of where you put the mouse. And so I just made it about, I don't know, that size. And then we come over here and we create a new fill layer. And we do simplex noise, select looping. I set mine to size 10. And then we set this layer to multiply. And now we have this noisy little gradient, and that should tile on forever. I've already got this texture in Godot. Once you've put it into Godot, you can then find it and drag it straight into your shader. And then we need to, so by default, any textures use the first UV, and we need it to use UV2. So we have to, see there's UV1, we need it to use UV2. And then we need to move all of this stuff over here a bit. And we're going to drag out of our texture that we just made into an add node. And we're going to put our other textures into this add. And then now we need to replace all of these that are coming from this node. We need to make it come from this node. So we go add into that one, add to there, add to there, and add to there. So we don't even need to move this texture because the other textures are scrolling across it. And that creates this effect of the waves lapping up onto the shore. So it looks pretty good already. And in fact, that is the entire ocean shader. But I think the effect is not complete without adding the caustics on the ocean floor. So I'll show you how to make that now. Oh, and just quickly before I show you how to make the caustics, I actually added a next pass standard material, set the transparency to alpha, and then I think I set this to 0.4 or something, and I just selected a bluish color. No, it must have been 0.2. That looks about right. I don't think it's the same color. I could go and get the other color, but you can't. So just select a color that you think looks nice and then adjust the alpha to fit. That looks all right. And we can have a look. This is what it was without that. So it was completely transparent. And this is with it. So it does look a little better. Still not complete without those caustics though, so I will show you how to do them next. Okay, and so to create the effect of the caustics on the ocean floor, we need to select the ocean floor mesh, open up the mesh, go to our surface, so open up the material, and we leave this first material as it is. So we want to have the sand texture, and we go to next pass, and this is where we create our shader. So we go to new shader, and we're going to call this Caustics for tutorial. I don't care about camel case. And then we open up our shader, and this shader is actually very similar to the previous one. It's slightly different, but you'll see. We go to texture, we add a texture 2D. We're going to add another noise texture, 256 by 128 again, seamless, put that all the way up to 1, create our fast noise, and this time we're going to select cellular, and I made the frequency 0.1, but again that will depend on how dense your UV mapping is. For fractal, I actually set this to none. See, that makes a big difference. Set that to none. And then cellular, I put mine at Euclidean squared. Okay, so that's our first texture. We're going to create another one. Okay, and so for our next texture, it's pretty much the same, but we're going to, we need to make this unique before we affect it. Otherwise, we will change our previous noise, and we need to make this unique as well. So change the seed, just so it's different to our previous one. And I made the frequency for my second one 0.15. And that should be the same as before. Yep, none, Euclidean squared. Cool. Let's... So one thing that I did differently here is I put these into a subtract node. Let's plug that into alpha. So you can see it does have that color, that shiny bit, but it's also got these white bits. And so we need to cut those white bits out. And to do that, we do a compare again. Compare. We want less than equal to, put that into A. And I just put -1. Oh no, I put 0, yeah. We don't want any that are above 0. And then this goes into a multiply node. Oops, that's meant to be vector 3. Plug that into the output. And so you can already see that's how mine looked before. It's just not moving yet. But so when we do subtract, we get that shiny color, almost glowing color. Whereas if we set this to add, and we plug that in, it's not quite the same. It's like white rather than that glowy, yellowy color. So we'll set that back to subtract. And now we just have to make them move again. So same as before, we need a UV panning node. Plug that in there, copy, paste for that one. Then we want a vector2 parameter for the direction. Direction 1. Set the default values to whatever you want, really. Direction 2 into the scale on the bottom one. And then lastly, we just need a time node to go into the offset. And now they're going the wrong way. And they're also going at the same speed, so they're not oscillating. I guess that's not the correct word, but whatever. Oscillating. Oscillating. I like that word. So we go down to the shader parameters, and we can change our directions. And if we look at this up here, positive x, I think that's positive x, is that way. Or is that negative x? Yeah, okay, that's negative. So just adjust your directions until you get the effect that you like. So you kind of want the caustics to move in tandem with the waves, which is a bit difficult to work out because you can't just set them to be the same speed and direction as the waves because they're on a different object and they're probably different sizes. So it doesn't quite work. So you just sort of have to eyeball it. It's kind of tricky. But I know that from my other scene, these are the values I used. And lastly, again, we need to fade it out at the end. And that's, again, done with my, done by Vertex colors. So I erased the alpha at the end here. So we need to select color, multiply, oops, no, we just want the alpha, and that's going to go into the alpha here, and that's the fade into the skybox, and that's it. That's the whole effect, entirely recreated from scratch. Let's take a look. The waves are rolling in nicely. Let's get a higher vantage point. You can see the highlights on the waves. See the caustics. It looks good. I can't even tell the difference between this scene and my previous scene. I used a similar thing for the river here. I basically just changed the values, so the directions, some of the thresholds, and I used a different texture for the edges, but it's the same principle. It's basically the same shader. But that's all. And I want to give a big shout out to this guy. He actually created this website, NoClip. And he also created this video on how the effect is done. It doesn't show you how to do it in Godot, which is why I made my tutorial. But it's a cool video, actually. It's quite interesting. So that's it. Hopefully you found that useful. And have a good day.